In March 2023, RNAO released its Nursing Career Pathways report, which examines the nursing profession and the opportunities to build nursing careers and fix Ontario's health system. The report also highlights the barriers to retaining and recruiting nurses in Ontario and identifies opportunities for short-term and longer-term improvements. The following interview with Dr. Vanessa Burkoski is an example of an extraordinary nursing career. She is a role model for current and future nurses.
I had a very strong relationship with my late grandmother, my Nona, and I also have a very strong relationship with my own mother, who is now 86. And my late grandmother had a stroke in her early 50s. So I spent a lot of time with my mother, helping my late grandmother because she had such mobility issues. And we would do, her shopping and help around her house. She was still living in her own home. I mean, she recovered fairly well, but she still had a number of obstacles that we needed to support her with. I remember my instincts about caring and helping others began at that time, just watching how my mother really cared for her own mother at the time. And again, as a young child, when I went to the hospital with my mother, I watched and observed the nurses. And, what I saw was, number one, real compassion, not only for my grandmother, but for the family. And number two, I really appreciated their knowledge base in terms of being able to help us to understand my grandmother's health condition and where it was going. And I think that really developed in me a sense of wanting to be in a profession where you could make a difference in people's lives. Nursing has grown into a profession where it is really the head, the mind, the intellect that is, comprises the heart and soul of nursing. Yes, there is always going to be a piece of that requires compassion and caring and a real desire to make a difference, a positive difference in people's lives. But I think today that one of the biggest barriers is not coming together as well as we can as a group of professionals that have an incredible amount to contribute, as a group of professionals that should be much more aware of how important they are to the system. When I think of a world without nurses, I can't even imagine it. And so oftentimes when I think about the importance of nursing, I think about that first because that brings to mind people's suffering and people's inability to cope and people's inability to really seek the right care and treatment that is needed if nurses aren't there to support their decision-making and to provide them with the resources that are really necessary to create a healthy life. I really believe that I pursued it. I mean, there's always an organic piece to it as you're practicing as a nurse, because that's one of the most wonderful things about nursing is that there are so many opportunities for you to grow and develop and to learn more about your profession, more about healthcare, and where and where you really want to fit and where you really want to make a difference. I worked in an impoverished area where there were, there was a high density of single family populations where, chronic disease and illness was overwrought, where, um, there was important work to do, not only with individual patients, but within a community to support this population of people. And during that time, not only was I practicing clinically, but I became very interested in, policy development, because it was one of the things that helped us to grow as a community health center. And when I say that, I mean, it was important for us to identify what the community needs were, and for that information to come from the people themselves. And so we did a lot of work to understand really where the priorities were in this particular community. And in experiencing all of that, I recognize that oftentimes there are differences in what a nurse perceives patients need to do versus what patients believe that they need to do. And it's an important function of nursing to reconcile those two, because at the end of the day, it is the informed individual that has the right to choose what sort of healthcare and what sort of therapeutic intervention is best for them. And so I became very interested in system views, read a number of and actually, as I proceeded through my career, when I went back to school to obtain my nurse practitioner certification, worked as a nurse practitioner in the CHC as well. And when I was getting my master's, what happened was it allowed me then to explore even further bigger system policy. And I focused many of my papers and assignments around those issues, around access to care, around supply and mix of nursing and nurses in the system, and where there might be challenges and barriers for the profession. And so, that was sort of part of, where my passion began for nursing policy. And so as an NP, at the community health center, I had the opportunity to work in an emergency department. And when I was recruited for that position, it was an opportunity to then to explore further into the acute care world and to understand that world better. I had then an opportunity to look at bigger system policy. And this is when I obtained the role as a provincial chief nursing officer. And again, that was, although, in reality for me, it was sort of thinking about, very far-fetched, sort of nursing role for myself. But in the end, based on, I think, the background education that I had and based on the experiences that I had, it really formed me into, a well-rounded nurse with the experience and the education to then look at system policy from a provincial chief nursing officer's perspective. And that was probably a time in my life where I'd always been very, not as involved, but involved with RNAO. And then when I became provincial chief nursing officer, of course, the interactions with RNAO and other major stakeholders then really helped me to grow as well, because I started to understand how a professional association can advocate and support again, for the nursing profession to be at its best, can influence change for the system that could support better healthcare delivery. And in that role, it was a time when the system was really looking at nurses from the perspective of supply and skill mix, and that was, it was so significant because we needed to make sure that we had a substantive and sustainable nursing workforce, and to be a part of that was just incredible for me. I believe nursing is the best profession in the world. And the reason I say that is because it allows you to use your intellect, to use the skill you have in care and compassion for people. It provides you with stimulating challenges that allow you to grow and develop. It provides you with some of the most satisfying moments of your life, knowing that you were able to make even a small difference in a person or a family or a community or a system. It is the intrinsic reward of nursing that I think keeps nursing as a top profession. There are multiple avenues to explore in nursing that can help individuals find their real passion. And there is a place for nurses in every healthcare setting, in workplace settings. It's just such a flexible, stimulating and desirable profession if you really want to grow and learn. Having said all of that, it is a very important responsibility that you take on as a nurse, because you are, in fact, working with people at the most vulnerable stage of their life many times. This profession, although can be and is challenging because of that, it's also incredibly rewarding.